What is up, everybody, and welcome to August 26th, 2024 banned and restricted announcement. I'm super excited to bring some of these news pieces to you because this is all really important information to me as I follow my path to pro. And we got some really excited changes that make me feel really good about some of my deck choices. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it, and then we'll talk about some of the decision making that's occurred along the way. So for those of you that want to just get down and dirty as to what is getting banned, we're seeing no changes in standard. Amalia is out of here in Pioneer. Sorin is out of here in Pioneer. Nadu's gone. Grief is gone in Modern. It's also gone in Legacy. We're going to see Urza's Saga get restricted, Vexing Bauble get restricted, and in the Explorer, we're going to see the same things happen as we did in Pioneer. So that was a lot of interesting bans and restrictions that we're going to see coming here for the rest of this competitive season. But some of the thoughts behind it are really, really interesting. This is a super good read, and I would encourage anybody who's considering competitive to take a gander at this, read through this. One of the things as a competitive player that really excited me was this line here. The timing did not take into account the timing of our competitive play season, namely regional championships, so RCs, or regional championship qualifiers, and the Pro Tour. So what was happening is they were banning cards in the middle of seasons, and so people weren't going into tournaments very confident in their deck. It was creating a lot of frustration, a lot of expense to figure out what decks to play, and overall, it just wasn't very cohesive for the competitive scene. So them putting the weight into the competitive season was really, really interesting and something that I find really exciting as a competitive player. It helps stabilize your deck for the competitive season and allows you to invest into your strategy and know the playing field without just a big mix-up in the middle of your season. So that was one of the really, really exciting pieces of news for me, is that they're building their ban and restricted list now around the competitive season. And so with that, the next series of ban and restrictions we're going to see is in December 16th, 2024, before the turnover of the next competitive season. They did want to note that they're not going to change anything with how they're approaching bans and restrictions for standard. They still feel like the once a year ban and restriction list coming out for standard is going to work for the standard format. As of now, they really feel like standard is in a good place. I would agree. It's a lot of fun. This is sort of that first full cycle of the new expanded window for standard. So standard used to be an every 2 years thing. It is now an every 3 years thing. It's given decks time to mature, adopt the new sets as they come through. So really interesting dynamic, and it allows you to kind of stick with your deck for a little bit longer without having that frustration of having to change your deck so often. Now, it's still a rotating format, so you do have to change out the deck. But they're seeing really interesting builds. One of the fun ones they pointed out was Rakdos Lizards. I've played against it a few times in Arena, and I can say it's pretty interesting that they're taking a tribe and making a really powerful standard deck out of it. So overall, standard is in a good place. Nothing to see here from a standard perspective. Now, this one is really exciting to me. So what we were seeing was a lot of play out of Amalia, Benavides Aguirre. My Spanish is bad. And so Amalia is a white-black ward, pay 3, and whenever you gain life, Amalia explores and then destroy all creatures if its power is exactly 20. You could combo this with a specific card. Wild Growth Walker was the one I was looking for. And basically create a loop where it would tick all the way up to 20-21 health and then wipe the board. And then there was even ways to make Wild Growth Walker immune, so you could essentially go infinite and it would draw the game. So it was really kind of busted, and they were seeing a metagame share of 30 over 30% of the over the RCQ season for that was for Rakdos, but for Amalia, they were seeing heavy play. It was causing stalemates. It was really sort of unfun sort of play with Amalia, and it really just kind of locked it down. And to be fair, I did play Amalia and Pioneer on Arena to that exact end. I've actually done the infinite combo a few times, stalls out the game and draws the game out. But Sorin was, I think, the problem here. So they're seeing they saw this over 30% with metagame share with Sorin, and it was just kind of an unfun play style. Being able to slam down Sorin, and then get some big cards out, like your Vein Ripper, Vein Ripper was the main problem, honestly. Getting Vein Ripper out, and then just the cost of Vein Ripper being so much to remove, especially early on in the game. If you had some sort of removal, you had to sacrifice a creature, you lost life, they gained life. So it was, here's the Vein Ripper. Edward, sacrifice your creature, and then whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So I would lose life, they would gain life, I lost a creature, and we're getting this 6 mana card out in like turn 3. So it was crazy. And then if they combined that with Thoughtseize and Fatal Pushes, basically you're just getting rid of all the cards in your hand and what few creatures you had on the board, and then lost life, and then they still had ways to bring that out of the graveyard or cast it again, or you still had Sorin to deal with. So it was really kind of unfun to play against, and I definitely don't feel bad about that one. And I don't feel bad about Amalia either, even though the combo deck was fun to play. It was a bit stifling as well. So those bans, I kind of saw Amalia coming. There was a lot of talk for that. The Sorin was a little bit of a surprise to me, but kind of in retrospect, definitely makes sense in my opinion to cut that. So Pioneer, currently I'm playing 2 different Pioneer decks. I'm playing the Izzet Phoenix deck, as well as the Ensoul Artifacts deck. So both of the decks I'm playing in Pioneer are currently safe. I'm going to evaluate the Pioneer season when that comes back around again to see if those decks are still viable. But they would be a little bit more fun to play now against these Amalia and Sorin. So I did play up against the Rakdos Vampires deck quite a bit in my Pioneer and just got wrecked over and over again. Did not do well in the Pioneer RCQs because of that Vampire deck. So they did consider other cards like Treasure Cruise and Fable of the Mirror Breaker, but for now, those will stay, and we'll get more updates on December 16th. Now the big one, because we are currently in the modern RCQ season and competitive season, is Nadu Winged Wisdom being banned. If you're not familiar with Nadu, 1 colorless, 1 green, 1 blue, 3/4 flying creature, and then it says creatures you control have, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand, and this ability triggers only twice each turn. So basically, people found out very quickly that if you use things like Shuko and a couple other cards, Shuko was the big one, that you could essentially infinitely move the artifact, and so it becomes a target of an ability, and you can just keep moving the artifact around or the equipment around, and it would just allow you to basically cycle through your whole deck and come up with some really straightforward win cons, really. This one is particularly interesting because they have gone so far. You can see this hyperlink here. I'll open it up. Michael Majors was the lead designer on Nadu. He just flat out says in the second sentence, Nadu was a mistake. It was just a design mistake. So this was Shuko. It was a artifact equipment. It was a 1 cost, and then you could equip 0. So you could just essentially keep moving the artifact around and then cycle through your library twice, 2 cards in your library. move it to the next creature, do the same thing again over and over and over again. You had that same ability with Outrider. It's a little bit more expensive at 2 colorless, 1 white, but it has the 0 cost damage ability on there. Or the next 1 damage that would be dealt to Outrider this turn is dealt to a target creature you control instead. So essentially, you can just keep moving it around for 0 cost, and it becomes a target ability, and just keep cycling. But the crazy thing is, the deck dominated tournaments with a 59% win rate. So basically, you didn't have a choice if you wanted to win. That's crazy. If you wanted to win your tournaments, you basically had to run Nadu. And it puts you in a weird spot, especially with the ban restricted list. They go on to talk about this, and this is a big reason. One of the big reasons they wanted to switch when the ban and restricted list came out is because you knew it was going to get banned, but you were still had to play it if you wanted to win. And so that's just not a good place to be as a competitive player. And so, but this is a very good write-up on sort of the thought process. Basically, it ended up being a last-minute change that didn't get play tested the way that they wanted to. I think they did a really good job at the end here, is kind of incorporating or stating what they learned from this whole thing. I really like this, so I'm actually going to read it out here. At a high level, we want to make sure that all relevant groups have time to impact change in a time window that makes sense for the project. They have faith that if the current Nadu had been scrutinized while our contractors were actively playtesting, things would have turned out better. So they actually brought in contractors to have a strict job in which was making Modern Horizons 3. And they went through it and play tested everything. And then they made this last minute change to Nadu, didn't have the chance to play test it. So really, he's saying here that, you know, they have faith in their system. They just didn't follow their system. So that's one thing that they're going to really kind of focus on going forward. And then the other thing is really interesting, putting an effort to be more conservative if you can't draw clear conclusions. And basically what he was saying is he didn't know about the Shuko or how powerful Shuko would be with Nadu. But he didn't know of that interaction. He knew that there was some problem with the text, and just kind of sent it and didn't go on the conservative side of the card. So in the future, he's going to take a more conservative approach if they're not feeling good about where a card is. So overall, really fell on his sword, really, leaned into this was a mistake. And they understand that, and that's why they feel good about banning Nadu right out, rather than some of the interactions like Shuko, Outrider, or even Lightning Greaves was another way to trigger Nadu. So they'd have to ban a whole bunch of cards just to stop Nadu. So they are going to go ahead and ban Nadu outright. So really great write-up. I highly encourage you to, if you want to kind of see the thought process of how cards are created, and somebody owning up. That was a very professional own up. As somebody who works in the professional world, when you make a mistake, you need to be able to admit that and define how you're going to go forward. The next big ban is Grief. This was an interesting one. I appreciate it. I do appreciate it, because I got wrecked by Esper Goryo Vengeance. If you caught one of my previous videos where I did the IRL tournament recap, so my tournament vlog series, I got wrecked by an Esper Goryo deck. It's also prevalent in the Mono Black Necrodominance deck. It's not one of the key pieces. It was just a powerful piece to the deck. So I still think we're going to see Mono Black Necrodominance, but I don't think we're going to see like the scam version of Mono Black Necrodominance, because obviously it's taking out Grief. But we'll still kind of see that as a strong play type. We also saw it in Living End decks, Rakdos mid-range decks, and there were some other decks that use Grief, but Grief is definitely not a fun card. I think this sentence here, this paragraph here, really kind of breaks it down. So for some time, Grief has been maligned as one of the least fun parts of competitive modern events. Starting the game down 2 or 3 cards from the various 1-mana ways it can be returned is quite brutal. Having a mulligan is already painful, but being double Grief directly afterwards just exacerbates an already unfun experience. Even outside of mulligans, having a turn 1 answer to 3 or 4 power menace creatures after an opponent has taken away your best cards is just asking too much. And that's exactly my experience with Goryo's Vengeance. Just stripped all the cards out of my hands. What little cards I could get on the board just got obliterated. And you're basically starting with 2, maybe 3 cards in hand after all is said and done. And they're sitting over there with their 5, 6, 7 cards in hand, just laying down absolute bombs. So I don't disagree with Grief being banned whatsoever after my experience playing against it. In my play test, it didn't really hit me all that much until I actually played in person, and that was rough. The one I was interested to see didn't get the Axe Hammer is the, or the Ban Hammer, I should say, is the One Ring. I'm kind of happy it didn't. It is played in a lot of decks, but it's not game breaking. I have a set of 4 of the One Ring. I was waiting for the stock market to crash on the One Ring, but I think actually that will kind of go up in cost because it didn't get banned. So I'm excited. I got a copy of 4. If I do decide to switch to a modern deck that has the One Ring in it, I'm already prepared to do so. So I'm really excited about that. But that was an interesting one that didn't get banned. There was some talk of that one getting banned, but it did not. They carried the Grief ban onto Legacy. I haven't played Legacy format, but they basically were going on to say the combination of Grief and Reanimate being so cheap just really made Legacy not feel fun, especially considering Legacy was all about playing your big, powerful cards. And if you can't play those big, powerful cards, like the format's not fun. So Legacy, we're also seeing Grief banned. We're seeing some restrictions in Vintage. Again, I don't play much Vintage either, but we're going to see a restriction of Urza Saga and Vexing Bauble. Basically kind of for the same reason as Grief. It just made it so you couldn't play your fun cards, and like you make this really big, powerful deck and you want to play your powerful cards, and basically if they're playing Urza Saga or Vexing Bauble, they are playing their fun cards before you can play your fun cards, and makes the whole thing unfun. And so it's just, they were always playing theirs first, and nobody was having fun. So that was sort of really interesting kind of take, as it just eliminated the fun people were having. And then moving into Magic the Gathering Arena formats like Alchemy, Explorer, Historic, and Timeless, and Brawl, we are seeing the Amalia and Sorin bans coming through to Explorer. So they are working towards, I thought this was good. They've probably said this a couple times before, but this is the first time I've seen it, is they're working towards Tournament Pioneer in Magic the Arena. So like I think most people kind of knew this. But it was the first time I've read it, so I got really excited about that. I'm like, all right, cool. They are actually trying to make Explorer a Pioneer, or eventually bringing Pioneer to Arena. So they're going to mirror the ban list in Explorer that you're seeing with Pioneer, and that's what we're seeing here. Alchemy, again, same sort of comments as Standard. They're really happy with where Alchemy is, the ability to balance the cards. Everything's good to go there. Historic, we saw some balancing in my last news article. We saw that they balanced Guide of Souls, Galvanic Discharge, and Ocelot Pride, and made some changes to those cards. So like Galvanic Discharge only gave you 2 energy versus 1 energy. Guide of Souls, I think they increased the costs and amount of energy cost. I forget exactly the changes, but they basically made everything more expensive. And we saw that, and we talked about that in the previous video. So other things going on is Timeless is not a very popular game format, but it does have some fun decks, and people do play it and are enjoying it. And then we're obviously seeing a lot of fun with the Bloomburrow Commanders that came out in Brawl. Again, not as a popular format as some of the others that we do see, but some really interesting stuff, and stuff that I'm really excited about. So what I would love for you to do at home is tell me your thoughts on the bans. Are you a competitive player? What do you feel about the modern changes? How do you feel about the banned and restricted list coming out in line with the competitive seasons? Do you think well, I think everybody thinks Nadu should have been banned, but what are your thoughts on like Grief and Amalia or Soren? I'm really interested in your thoughts there. I think those ones have been talked about, but everybody wasn't as confident as they were in Nadu getting banned. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you like news pieces like this, you want to catch more content, to hit the like, the subscribe button. I also stream. I try to stream 3 or 4 days a week. I am recording a Bronze to Mythic run, so go check out that playlist and see my Bronze to Mythic and Draft run. And then follow me on Twitter or X. Nobody's ever going to call it X. And Instagram, where I'm just documenting my IRL ventures and my path to pro, where I'm trying to go pro in Magic the Gathering. And so I'm doing draft events. I'm doing RCQs. I'm just all over the place, all over Magic. So come let me know your thoughts. And until next time, we'll catch you at the table.